Sometimes silence is the loudest roar. Sometimes walking away is the most powerful move you can make. You ever sat in a room where someone's trying to get under your skin and you just sit there, still, calm, and they don't know what to do with that silence? That's not weakness, that's strength. That's self-mastery. That's emotional control. See, life will test you. People will provoke you. They'll push you, lie to you, gossip about you, betray you, try to ruin your peace just to see you fall apart. But let me tell you something. Your power is in your response. And sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. We live in a world that glorifies reaction, where people clap back, lash out, post every emotion they feel like a badge of honor. But the truth, the real warriors, they move in silence. They don't chase validation. They don't hand their peace to anyone on a silver platter. Being emotionally untouchable doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you've trained your spirit to rise above the noise. You don't fight every battle. You don't answer every insult. You don't let the enemy pick the battlefield. Because when you don't react, you win. Emotional control is not about becoming cold or detached. It's about standing firm when the world around you is shaking. It's about feeling the fire, but choosing not to burn down everything in your path. See, we're all human. We feel anger, disappointment, betrayal, hurt. But emotional control means you don't let those feelings decide your next move. You feel it, but you don't feed it. You let it pass through you without allowing it to take over you. That is real strength. That is discipline. And discipline is what builds greatness. When people expect you to snap and lose it and you don't, they realize they can't touch you. They can't shake you. And that's when you become powerful. When you can walk through a storm and still speak with grace. When you can be disrespected and still carry yourself like royalty. You're not suppressing your emotions. You're choosing how and where they are expressed. And that choice, that moment of pause, that deep breath before the reaction, that's where your power lives. The world will poke at you. Friends will test you. Strangers will misjudge you. People will spread rumors, start fires, bring chaos to your door because they think if they can get you to react, they can control your outcome. But emotional control tells them, you don't own me. When you stop reacting to every slight, every jab, every disrespectful word, you stop bleeding power. It's like this. Every time you react in anger, you hand someone a piece of your peace. And when you do that over and over again, you wake up one day wondering why you feel empty, bitter, exhausted. That's because you've given your energy to things unworthy of it. But when you decide, I will not be moved by every foolish thing around me, something changes in your spirit. Your peace becomes sacred. Your energy becomes priceless. And you don't waste it trying to prove anything to anyone. There's something incredible that happens when you stop trying to control the world around you and start mastering the world within you. You stop chasing the need to be understood and you start finding peace in your own understanding. That's emotional control. That's inner power. Most people think power is about dominance, about speaking louder, moving faster, acting tougher. But true power is often quiet. It walks into a room without needing to announce itself. It commands respect without ever having to raise its voice. When you've got emotional control, you don't fight for attention, you move with intention. You don't try to convince others of your worth, you already know it. And because you know who you are, you don't need to respond to everything that challenges it. You don't need to justify your dignity to someone too blind to see it. That's what makes you unstoppable.
You ever notice how people with no control over themselves try to control everyone else? They don't have peace, so they disturb yours. They don't have love, so they hate on yours. They don't have purpose, so they try to distract you from yours. And if you let them, they'll keep you running in circles, reacting to their chaos while your destiny slips further away. But when you've got emotional control, you see the trap for what it is. You don't bite the bait. You don't chase every distraction. You don't engage with every critic. You're too focused on your calling. You're too rooted in your faith. You understand that not everything requires a response, that some things are best left in silence, that protecting your energy is not weakness, it's wisdom. And wisdom will take you further than any argument ever could. Emotional control is not about ignoring your emotions, it's about leading them. You can feel anger, but you choose not to be controlled by it. You can feel hurt, but you don't allow it to make you bitter. You can feel disrespected, but you respond with class, not chaos. That's not easy. It takes practice. It takes falling and getting back up. It takes moments where you do react, where you lose your cool and you learn from it. It's not about being perfect. It's about being aware, aware of what triggers you, aware of what steals your joy, aware of how much it costs every time you lose control. And once you become aware, you start guarding yourself differently. You start walking into rooms with clarity. You start moving with purpose. You stop needing revenge because peace is enough, growth is enough, success is enough. You stop proving yourself and start improving yourself. In life, you will be misunderstood. You will be underestimated. You will be disrespected by people who have no idea what you've been through. And in those moments, the desire to react will be strong. You want to defend yourself, to speak your truth, to shout back at the ignorance. But ask yourself this: is their misunderstanding worth your peace? Is their opinion worth your energy? Is their insult worth your crown? 9 times out of 10, it's not. Because people's words don't define your value. Their hate doesn't cancel your purpose. Their chaos doesn't rewrite your destiny. When you learn that, when you internalize that, you stop letting every insult shake you. You realize, I am not obligated to attend every argument I'm invited to. You start moving like a king, like a queen, with poise, with purpose, with emotional power that nobody can shake. Let them talk, let them lie, let them gossip, doubt you, try to trigger you. That's noise, and you weren't born to answer to noise. You were born to rise above it. Emotional control is about learning how to be calm in the storm, not because the storm isn't real, but because your anchor is stronger. You learn to sit with your emotions before you act on them. You take time to ask, is this reaction going to serve me or steal from me? And when you choose stillness over shouting, peace over pettiness, you win. You win because you stayed in control. You win because you didn't let the world shape your character. You win because you chose to operate on a higher level. And when you keep doing that consistently, powerfully, intentionally, there comes a day when the world realizes you can't be touched, not because you're cold, but because you're in complete command of your soul. Silence isn't weakness. It isn't surrender. It's not you backing down or being afraid. Silence is a decision, a powerful, intentional, disciplined decision. And the truth is, sometimes the strongest move you can make is to say nothing. Not every situation deserves your energy. Not every insult deserves your response. When you're silent, you give yourself space to think. You're not just reacting. You're weighing the cost of what happens if you speak. Because once words leave your mouth, you don't get them back. And sometimes silence speaks louder than any sentence ever could. It says, I see you, I hear you, but I will not let you pull me into your chaos. And that unsettles people because they expected a reaction. They wanted you to lose control. But your silence, that's the move they didn't see coming. That's power. When you stay silent, you're not avoiding the battle, you're choosing the battlefield. You're refusing to let someone else's immaturity drag you into a fight that will cost you your peace. And that kind of restraint, it's not easy. It takes maturity. It takes humility. And it takes a deep understanding that your energy is sacred. When someone lies on your name or tries to bait you with disrespect, the natural instinct is to fire back. But what do you win in that moment? A temporary sense of satisfaction? A crowd cheering for your clapback? None of that lasts. But when you respond with silence, you keep your dignity intact. You let them talk while you walk. You let them argue while you rise. Because silence is never about losing. It's about choosing. Choosing not to let petty people have access to your power. The world doesn't understand silence because it thrives on noise. Drama, reactions, arguments, debates, that's what feeds the masses. But when you remain still in the middle of the storm, when you don't flinch, when you don't answer their accusations, people notice. They wonder what you know that they don't. They wonder why you're so calm. That silence, it's unsettling. And that's what makes it strategic. You don't have to prove your point to anyone who's already decided to misunderstand you. You don't have to respond to nonsense because silence keeps you focused. It keeps you from wasting hours explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding your worth. It keeps you from saying something you'll regret. It gives you the higher ground, and from that place, your steps are clearer. Your direction isn't fogged by emotion or wounded pride. You're free to keep moving forward while they're stuck waiting for a reaction you'll never give. There's something beautifully disruptive about silence. It exposes the intent of the people around you. Because when you don't react, you start to see who really wanted to understand and who just wanted to fight. You see who was looking for peace and who came for war. And in that clarity, you stop fighting meaningless battles. You stop trying to prove yourself to people who can't even see your value. Silence helps you sort through the noise. It helps you protect your time, your heart, your energy. You start to value peace more than being right. You stop walking into rooms trying to be heard and start walking into them with presence. And when you've got that kind of presence, rooted in calm, grounded in confidence, built on silence, you become unshakable. They don't know what you're thinking. And that mystery, that unsettles them more than any loud response ever could. You don't owe everyone access to your voice. You don't owe everyone an explanation. Sometimes silence is how you teach people they don't get to play with you. You don't have to match energy. You set the tone. When they bring gossip, you respond with stillness. When they bring drama, you keep your distance. That's how you protect your power. That's how you control the narrative without saying a word. Because silence isn't you doing nothing, it's you doing everything behind the scenes. It's you choosing strategy over emotion. It's you choosing peace over pride. And that's what throws people off. They thought you'd come out swinging. They thought you'd fall apart. They thought you'd lose it, but instead you leveled up quietly. And when you finally speak, if you even do, your words carry weight because they weren't thrown in anger. They were delivered in wisdom. There are moments in life when silence is your shield. It keeps you from damage. It keeps you from giving someone the satisfaction of seeing you flinch. You ever notice how people get louder when you don't respond? How they say more, post more, shout more, just to get a reaction? That's because your silence unsettles their insecurity. They expected your energy, but what you gave them was peace. And peace is power. It shows that you're not desperate for approval, you're not hunting for validation, and you're not stuck in the cycle of needing to be seen. You are already secure in who you are. And when you know who you are, you realize silence is not emptiness. It's full of control, full of strength, full of direction. It's a spiritual posture that says, I won't fight a battle that doesn't elevate me. I won't engage in a war that distracts me from my destiny. When you choose silence, you reclaim your time. You reclaim your thoughts. You reclaim your ability to think beyond the moment. Because reactions are loud, but they're often short-sighted. Silence gives you long-term vision. It gives you space to align your actions with your purpose, not just your pain. And when you live from purpose, your silence becomes sacred. You're no longer out here trying to win arguments. You're out here winning in life. The people who tried to trigger you, they'll eventually see that you were never running from the fight. You were choosing the right one. And that's the secret. That's the strategy. Let them think you're quiet because you're weak. Let them think you're silent because you're scared. But one day They'll realize the silent ones were the strongest all along, because in your silence, you built strength. In your silence, you found clarity. And in your silence, you became untouchable. People will talk, they always do. They'll call you names, they'll question your intentions. They'll try to define you based on their limited understanding, their fear, or their jealousy. But you are not what people say about you. You are not their labels. You are not their rumors. You are not their assumptions. You are not the version of you they've created in their minds to make themselves feel better. What they say about you speaks more about who they are than who you are. And if you live your life trying to chase approval, trying to correct every lie, trying to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, you'll lose your soul trying to please an audience that was never for you in the first place. You were created with purpose, with fire, with something rare. And rare things, they get misunderstood, they get talked about, they get attacked. But you are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be real, to be whole, to be exactly who you are called to be, even when it makes others uncomfortable. Because the truth is, what they say doesn't define you. How you carry yourself through it does. When people lie about you, when they spread their versions of your story, you don't owe them a correction. Let them talk, let them whisper, let them throw dirt on your name. Because even buried under the weight of their words, a seed still grows. That's who you are, a seed. And seeds don't argue with the dirt. They don't resist the darkness. They just grow. And that growth, it becomes undeniable. You don't have to defend yourself when your life becomes proof of your truth. Let your peace speak. Let your consistency speak. Let your elevation speak. Because when you rise without clapping back, when you thrive without responding, when you walk with grace in the face of disrespect, that's when you show the world who you truly are. Not in noise, not in drama, but in quiet strength. Because silence in the face of slander, that's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's the confidence that says, say what you want, but watch where I'm going. Because who you are isn't found in someone's sentence, it's found in your steps. The moment you begin to internalize the opinions of others, you start shrinking. You start editing yourself. You begin to wonder if maybe they're right. Maybe you are too much, too different, too broken, too loud, too quiet. But that's the trap. The trap is believing you must adjust your identity to be digestible for people who were never meant to walk with you. You were not created to fit in boxes. You weren't designed to blend in. So stop apologizing for being different. Stop feeling guilty because someone else can't see your value. Stop thinking their words get to define your worth. What someone says in their limited perspective should never outweigh the truth you know in your soul. And deep down, you know who you are. You know your battles, your resilience, your progress. You know the nights you cried, the mornings you rose, the things you never told a soul, and yet you kept going. That's who you are. Not the name they gave you, not the story they told about you. You are so much more than that. You're the proof that broken crayons still color masterpieces. You were never meant to carry the weight of other people's opinions. That's their burden, not yours. And the moment you let go of trying to please everyone is the moment you truly get free. Free to speak your truth. Free to walk in your calling. Free to love yourself without apology. Because approval is a prison. And every time you try to win someone over, you hand them the key to your peace. But real strength that comes when you reclaim that key. When you say, I don't need you to agree with me, believe in me, or support me for me to be whole. When you stop chasing validation and start standing in your identity, you become untouchable. Because people can talk, people can doubt, people can walk away. But if you know who you are, none of it sticks. Let them misunderstand you. Let them call you what they want. Your truth is not up for debate. You are not here to fit into their version of you. You are here to become everything you were created to be, even if it scares them, especially if it scares them. You have to understand the world doesn't always applaud authenticity. They don't celebrate people who break the mold. They try to box you in because your freedom threatens their control. Your voice threatens their silence. Your light exposes their shadows. That's why they talk. That's why they try to reduce you. It's not that you're wrong. It's that you're powerful and people fear what they can't control. But that fear, it's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to stay rooted in your truth, to hold your head high, even when the whispers get loud, to love yourself enough to not water yourself down for anyone's comfort. Because you are not here to live a life that pleases the crowd. You're here to live a life that honors your calling. And calling will always be louder than criticism if you listen to it. So when the voices get loud, when the names get heavy, remember, your identity is anchored in something deeper than public opinion. It's anchored in your purpose, your process, your growth. And none of that can be taken away by words that were never true to begin with. You will never be able to silence every lie. You won't be able to correct every narrative. And honestly, you don't need to. Because at some point, the truth becomes undeniable. Time reveals what words try to hide, patterns show what people tried to cover. And your life, that's your loudest testimony. Not the rumors, not the drama, but the way you love, the way you endure, the way you rise again and again. That's who you are. You are not the version of you that people create in their minds. You are the version that keeps showing up, the one who keeps building, the one who keeps healing. You are the one who proves with every step forward that lies can't kill purpose, that pain can't erase identity, that noise can't drown out destiny. So stand tall in your truth. Speak only when it serves your peace. Let your progress speak for itself. And let them talk if they want. Because at the end of the day, their words are just echoes. But your truth, that's your legacy. You don't need permission to be great. You don't need applause to know you're valuable. And you sure don't need the approval of people who are never qualified to judge your worth. You are not what they called you when they were angry. You are not the assumptions they made when they didn't know your story. You are not the shadow they cast when they couldn't handle your light. You are chosen. You are becoming. You are evolving. And no one gets to rewrite your narrative but you. So walk like you know who you are. Love like you've healed from what they tried to do to you. Speak only when necessary. And let your silence be sacred. Let your life be louder than their noise, because no matter what they say, your truth remains. And the more you grow, the more irrelevant their opinions become. They don't know the real you, but you do. And that's more than enough. There comes a point in life where you have to choose what matters more, your ego or your peace. You can spend all your time trying to prove that you were right, trying to make someone see what they refuse to see, trying to win a battle that won't give you any real victory. Or you can walk away. You can let go. You can breathe and realize that not every fight is worth your energy. Because peace isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's knowing that being right doesn't always bring healing. It doesn't always fix relationships. It doesn't always change minds. But peace calms your spirit. Peace restores your mind. Peace lets you sleep at night. And there's nothing more valuable than living a life where your mind is quiet, your soul is steady, and your heart is free. We live in a world that glorifies the last word, the clapback, the mic drop moment. But real strength is found in restraint, in choosing not to escalate, in choosing not to sacrifice your inner calm just to win an argument. That's a different kind of power, the kind of power that's rare. And once you taste peace, you stop chasing battles that don't matter anymore. Sometimes people will wrong you, hurt you, lie in your name, and everything in you will want to fight back, to clear your name, to explain your side, to make them pay for the pain they caused. But peace whispers something different. Peace says, let it go. Not because you're okay with what they did, but because you're no longer willing to carry the poison of resentment. When you keep trying to be right, to prove your version of the story, you give people access to your energy. You hand them your attention. And some people don't deserve that access anymore. Some people aren't worth the breath it would take to correct them. And when you realize that, you don't become passive, you become powerful. Because now your joy, your calm, your future, they're no longer tied to someone else's acknowledgement of your truth. You free yourself. You detach, you rise above, because holding on to your peace, especially in the face of injustice, is one of the highest forms of self-respect. It means you value your mental health more than you value being right. Peace doesn't mean you agree with what happened. It doesn't mean you're okay with being misunderstood. It means you've grown past the point of needing to be validated by those who refuse to understand you in the first place. It's about emotional maturity, knowing that not everyone deserves an explanation, not every situation needs your voice, not every lie needs to be corrected. Because sometimes the more you explain, the more people twist your words. The more you argue, the deeper you get pulled into their chaos. So you choose peace. You let the noise rage outside while you remain still inside. You realize that no amount of rightness is worth your mental ruin. You stop fighting battles that lead nowhere and start protecting your peace like it's sacred, because it is. Once you've experienced what it feels like to live free of drama, free of unnecessary conflict, free of the emotional chaos that comes with always needing to be right, you'll never go back. You'll realize that peace isn't something weak people settle for. It's something strong people fight to protect, no matter the cost. The need to be right often stems from a place of insecurity. It's a fear that if you don't correct the narrative, you'll be seen as weak or as the one at fault. But the truth is, your strength isn't found in how loudly you argue. It's found in how deeply you know who you are. When you're rooted in your truth, you don't panic when people lie about you. You don't spiral when people misunderstand you. You stand firm. You stay grounded. Because the truth has a way of surfacing all on its own. It may take time. It may require silence. But eventually, your actions, your consistency, your character, those things speak louder than words ever could. And when you understand that, you start choosing peace, not pride. You stop giving people the power to disrupt your spirit just to prove a point. You walk away, not because you're defeated, but because you're wise enough to know that some battles are beneath you. Peace becomes your priority, not because the other person was right, but because you refused to let the situation steal your joy any longer. That's not defeat, that's divine strength. But holding on to your peace means releasing your need to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. It means walking away from conversations that are designed not to heal, but to hurt. And that's hard, especially when your heart is still bruised, especially when your truth feels like it's suffocating under someone else's lies. But peace is a long game. It says, I trust that what's for me can't be taken by manipulation. I trust that time reveals truth. I trust that my life will speak for itself. And that kind of trust, that's a whole new level of freedom. You stop defending yourself at every turn. You stop exhausting your spirit on debates that don't matter. You stop begging people to see your side. Instead, you focus on healing, on growth, on becoming. And as you do that, the noise fades. The people who tried to define you get quiet. And you realize they were never the ones holding your destiny anyway. They were just a detour, a distraction. But your peace, that's part of your power. It's the proof that you've elevated above the pettiness. that you no longer live for their approval, you live for your purpose. Some of the greatest moments of clarity come not from proving a point, but from walking away with your peace intact. Um, there's a certain kind of confidence that comes when you realize you don't need the last word. You don't need to win every exchange. You don't need to stay in the ring fighting people who are battling their own demons and projecting their chaos onto you. Peace means setting boundaries that protect your emotional space. It means choosing quiet over chaos, stillness over shouting, grace over grudges. And when you start living like that, you change. You glow different, you love different, you stop reacting from your wounds and start responding from your wisdom. You're no longer triggered by every false accusation. You don't flinch when someone disrespects you because you know who you are, and no one's opinion can shake that. Your peace becomes a filter. If it costs you your calm, your clarity, your focus, it's not worth it, not anymore. And the people who value you will meet you in that peaceful place. They won't drag you into storms. They'll help you build shelters from them because peace attracts what force never could. Choosing peace over being right is the quiet revolution of your soul. It's the silent act of rebellion against a world that profits off conflict, chaos, and noise. It's you saying, I will not sacrifice my sanity just to be seen as the winner. It's walking away with dignity rather than staying and proving a point that won't change anything. And you'll notice something when you begin to live this way. The noise around you may increase for a while, but eventually it dies down. People realize they can't bait you anymore. They can't steal your energy. They can't drag you into unnecessary storms. And that's when you realize peace wasn't just a preference. It was your power move. It was your strategy. It was your way of reclaiming your emotional territory. You didn't lose by not arguing. You won by protecting your spirit. And as that peace grows, so does your clarity, your strength, your joy. You stop reacting to everything that pokes at your pride, and you start responding only to what aligns with your purpose. That's not just wisdom, that's freedom. And when you get a taste of that, nothing else compares. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of power. The enemy doesn't need to destroy you outright. He just needs your reaction. That's all it takes to pull you off track. You see, the battle isn't always external. It's not always a visible war with noise and fury. Sometimes it's a subtle game of bait. The enemy will whisper insults through people, provoke you with situations, stir up misunderstandings, all to see if you'll take the bait. Because the moment you react from a place of emotion, you've handed over your power. You've shifted your focus. You've stepped away from peace and into chaos. That's the goal, to get you so distracted defending yourself that you forget who you are, to get you so offended that you stop walking in your purpose, to make you so emotionally entangled that you lose your clarity. But when you recognize that your reaction is the real prize in spiritual warfare, you learn to guard it. You learn to pause instead of explode. You learn to pray instead of panic. The enemy wants you loud, flustered, angry, reckless, because as long as you're reacting, you're not hearing. As long as you're emotional, you're not strategic. And that's where your downfall begins, not with what happens to you, but how you respond to it. When you understand the enemy's tactics, you stop being surprised by the attack. You start seeing patterns. You start noticing that every time you're close to peace, close to breakthrough, close to clarity, something or someone comes along to stir the pot. The comments become crueler. The people around you become more difficult. The opportunities suddenly feel more out of reach. And the temptation is to fight fire with fire, to get louder, tougher, colder. But that's the trap, because your reaction is the permission slip. When you respond in rage, you give the enemy room to operate. But when you stay silent, when you stay centered, when you hold your peace, you take the power back. You show that you're no longer playing on the enemy's field. You've stepped into a higher mindset, and that confuses him. because he doesn't know what to do with someone who doesn't flinch, someone who doesn't retaliate, someone who refuses to let petty attacks shape their day. That kind of spiritual discipline makes you untouchable, not because the attack isn't real, but because your reaction is now anchored in wisdom, not woundedness. It's easy to believe that defending yourself is strength, that the louder you are, the more powerful you'll appear. But the truth is, real strength isn't proven in the noise, it's found in restraint. The enemy wants you reactive because a reactive spirit is a vulnerable spirit. It's open to manipulation, it's quick to judgment, it's impatient with truth. That's why the enemy doesn't have to destroy your plans. He just has to get you to self-destruct with your reaction. If he can get you to curse when you should have stayed quiet, strike when you should have stood still, break down when you should have been still, then he wins. Not because you weren't called, but because you were distracted. You gave away your energy, your focus, your inner calm to battles that weren't yours to fight. And when that becomes a pattern, your spirit becomes tired, your clarity fades, your faith shakes. That's why protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's survival. It's saying, I will not hand over my emotional keys just because someone knocked on my door with chaos. You are not obligated to show up to every argument you're invited to. Silence is strength. Non-reaction is power. The enemy studies you, he knows your triggers, he knows what buttons to push, and he'll use familiar faces, old habits, past wounds, anything he can to make you lose control. Because he knows if he can get to your emotions, he can confuse your decisions. If he can get you to move based on feelings instead of faith, he can pull you off course. That's why spiritual warfare isn't always about big dramatic moments. It's in the small, subtle tests. Someone cuts you off and you want to lash out. Someone betrays you and you want revenge. Someone doubts you and you want to prove them wrong. But what if you paused? What if you refused to play into the pattern? What if you responded with stillness, not with spite? That's where your growth lives. That's where your maturity takes root, not in always being right, but in being righteous. Not in reacting, but in rising. When the enemy can no longer provoke a reaction from you, he loses access to your emotions. And when your emotions are stable, your vision becomes clear. You stop wasting energy on battles that don't grow you. You stop bleeding over things that aren't worth your peace. One of the hardest things you'll ever do is not respond to something that hurt you. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise. There's a time to speak and a time to be silent. The enemy will use timing to tempt you. He'll hit you when you're tired, when you're emotionally drained, when you're already doubting yourself. He's patient. He waits for the perfect moment to strike. And in that moment, your greatest defense won't be your voice, it'll be your discipline. The ability to say, not today. I won't react just because it feels good in the moment. I won't sacrifice long-term peace for short-term satisfaction. That's a spiritual flex. That's what makes you dangerous in the kingdom, because you're no longer controlled by circumstance. You've developed the muscle of stillness. And that stillness, that's when God can speak. That's when you can hear clearly. That's when direction becomes obvious. The enemy thrives in chaos, but you thrive in calm. You don't fight his fire with more fire. You let it burn out while you walk away covered in peace. That's real warfare. Winning by walking in divine control, not emotional chaos. There's a difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is emotional, it's fast, impulsive, and usually rooted in pride or pain. Response is intentional. It's measured, grounded, and rooted in purpose. The enemy banks on your reactions because they're unpredictable. They come from your wounds. But when you respond from your healed place, your whole energy changes. You no longer match the enemy's pace. You set your own. You no longer stoop down to every insult thrown your way. You rise above. You conserve energy for the things that matter. And in doing that, you build resilience. You teach yourself that every offense doesn't deserve your presence. Every conflict doesn't need your involvement. Every enemy doesn't require your engagement. You begin to ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Is this worth my peace? Will this reaction cost me more than the offense itself? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. What the enemy meant to pull you down becomes the very thing that reminds you to rise. Not because you're ignoring it, but because you're prioritizing what matters most. If you don't need to prove anything to people who were never meant to understand you, your reaction doesn't validate your strength. Your peace does. The moment you understand that your reaction is the target, you begin to guard it like treasure. You no longer hand it out freely. You don't respond to every insult. You don't dignify every disturbance with attention. And something shifts. You become harder to provoke, quieter in the storm, more grounded under pressure. And that's when your authority grows. That's when your influence deepens. Because the world is full of noise, full of reactivity, full of people who explode at the slightest inconvenience. But you've chosen something different. You've chosen to walk in power by refusing to give the enemy a seat at your table. He may still try, he may still push, but you're not who you used to be. You've trained yourself to pause, to breathe, to remember who you are. Your reaction is no longer for sale. It belongs to you. And with it, you protect your calling, you protect your energy, you protect your growth. Because the enemy may want your reaction, but you finally realized it's not his to have. Your discipline defines your power in ways that most people never realize. It's not the flash of talent, not the burst of motivation, not even the moment of inspiration that determines your greatness. It's the grind, the quiet, consistent decisions you make every day. Discipline is what separates the dreamers from the doers. It's waking up early when no one's watching. It's choosing your priorities over your pleasures. It's saying no to distractions when everything in you wants to drift. Power isn't in the emotion of the moment. It's in the structure of your habits. A disciplined person doesn't just wait for the right mood or the perfect opportunity. They create the mood. They build the opportunity because they know that greatness doesn't come from what you occasionally do. It comes from what you consistently become. The enemy wants you lazy, reactive, inconsistent, because then you're predictable. Then you're weak. But when you become disciplined, you become dangerous because you can no longer be swayed by temptations or trapped by comfort. You have a code you live by. You have a standard that keeps you anchored. Discipline means you don't need to announce your power. You walk in it every day with purpose, with consistency, with control. The most powerful version of you is not the one who screams the loudest or fights the hardest. It's the one who's mastered self-control, and self-control is born out of discipline. It's the strength to pause when you're angry, to walk away when you're provoked, to remain focused when everything around you is fighting for your attention. Discipline is what allows you to say, this is who I am, and nothing is going to pull me off course. When you operate with discipline, you move different. You don't chase validation. You don't seek applause. You don't live for emotional highs. You move with strategy. You honor your word even when no one is holding you accountable. That's where real power comes from, not just in your ability to lead others, but in your ability to lead yourself. Discipline is the foundation of respect. You respect yourself enough to do what needs to be done, regardless of how you feel. And that kind of integrity builds a power that cannot be faked, cannot be forced, cannot be stolen. It's earned in the dark, where most people quit. It's forged in the quiet, where excuses are loud. It's cultivated in private, but it shines in public. The world doesn't reward potential, it rewards discipline. Everyone has dreams, but not everyone has the consistency to pursue them. The ones who rise are not always the most talented or the most gifted. They're the ones who refuse to quit, the ones who keep showing up, The ones who build a routine and stick to it when it's boring, when it's hard, when no one's clapping. That's power. Power is doing what you said you would do long after the mood you set it in has passed. Power is pushing through the resistance, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Discipline teaches you that your future is not built in grand moments, but in small daily choices. It's what you eat, how you think, when you train, who you allow in your circle, how you respond to adversity. Every discipline choice becomes a brick in the foundation of your power. And the more you choose discipline, the more solid that foundation becomes. So when the storms come, and they will, you don't shake. You don't collapse. You stand strong because you didn't build your life on convenience. You built it on consistency. People talk a lot about goals, but goals mean nothing without discipline. Anybody can set a goal. Anybody can write down a vision, but not everybody has the character to wake up and execute when it's inconvenient. Discipline separates the emotional from the intentional. If you only move when you feel like it, your life will always be dictated by circumstance. But if you move with discipline, you create your own momentum. You stop waiting for the right moment, you become the right moment. And that scares people. That confuses the enemy because most people are slaves to how they feel. But a disciplined person has already decided before the storm, before the test, before the temptation, they've made the decision to show up no matter what. That level of consistency breeds excellence. It turns amateurs into professionals. It turns weakness into wisdom. Discipline doesn't just build your body, it builds your mind, your character, your destiny. And over time, discipline gives you options. The disciplined get to choose their future. The undisciplined are at the mercy of whatever life throws their way. So if you want to change your life, start by changing your habits. Every single day, discipline doesn't feel good in the moment. It doesn't feed your ego. It doesn't satisfy your cravings. In fact, discipline often feels like loss before it feels like power. You lose comfort, you lose instant gratification, you lose the approval of people who wanted you to stay average. But what you gain is far greater. You gain clarity, you gain focus, you gain control, you gain results that last. Discipline teaches you how to manage yourself, and that is the greatest form of strength. Because when you master yourself, nobody else can master you. Not their words, not their opinions, not even their doubt. Discipline creates emotional armor. It allows you to endure criticism without breaking, to keep working without applause, to stay grounded when others are shaken. It gives you a rhythm, and a drive that doesn't depend on feelings. When you have discipline, you can endure more, build more, become more. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. That's when you become dangerous, not because you're trying to prove something, but because your life speaks for itself. Your results speak louder than your words. Your consistency speaks louder than your image. And that's what real power looks like. There will always be people more talented than you. There will always be people with more resources, more connections, more advantages. But discipline levels the playing field. Discipline makes you relentless. You may not have everything you want yet, but if you stay disciplined, you'll build what you need. One day at a time. Discipline is what wakes you up at 5 a.m. while others sleep. Discipline is what keeps you training, studying, preparing when others are relaxing. It's not glamorous, it's not flashy, but over time it separates you because while they rely on moments, you build a lifestyle, and a disciplined lifestyle becomes your edge. You no longer need perfect conditions. You no longer wait on motivation. You just move with purpose, with fire, with consistency. That's how you outlast, outgrow, and outperform. Not with noise, but with repetition, not with shortcuts, but with standards. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to the level of your discipline. And if your discipline is strong, nothing can break you because you've already chosen the hard road. And that road is what forges real power, not just to succeed, but to sustain it. Discipline is the quiet force that holds your life together when everything else is falling apart. It's the inner agreement you've made with yourself. I won't quit. I won't fold. I won't waste what I've been given. That's the kind of power the world can't take away. When you're disciplined, you don't need perfect circumstances. You create them. You don't need everything to go your way. You adjust. You bend, but don't break. You stumble, but don't stop. Discipline gives you emotional strength, spiritual strength, physical strength. It makes you trustworthy, not just to others, but to yourself. You become someone you can count on. And that confidence can't be bought, borrowed, or faked. It's earned in the fire. Discipline is your anchor in chaos, your compass in confusion, your engine in fatigue. You don't rely on hype. You don't chase every trend. You stick to the path. You stay true to the mission. That's how empires are built. That's how lives are transformed. And that's how power is sustained, not by luck, not by chance, but by discipline every single day, in silence, in strength, in self-mastery. When it's all said and done, the true power in life doesn't come from how loud you speak or how big your presence is. It comes from how deeply rooted you are in discipline, emotional control, silence, and self-awareness. In a world that's constantly trying to provoke you, distract you, and pull you out of character, your ability to remain calm, composed, and consistent is what sets you apart. The enemy doesn't need to defeat you. He just needs you to react. Because once you react without thinking, you hand over your control. But when you choose peace over chaos, silence over shouting, and wisdom over impulse, you take back that control. You become emotionally untouchable. Not because life doesn't hit hard, but because you've trained your spirit to be stronger than your circumstances. People will talk. They'll criticize, judge, and try to define you with their words. But you are not what they say. You are who you decide to become. And every day you stay disciplined. Every day you refuse to break. You're proving to yourself and the world that your value is not dependent on opinions. It's rooted in purpose. You don't need to be right all the time. You just need to be at peace. Because peace is the ultimate power. It's not weakness. It's control. It's the strength to walk away when you're tempted to argue, the wisdom to let go when you're tempted to hold on, and the maturity to choose your growth over your ego. Through it all, let your life speak louder than your emotions. Let your silence be your answer, your consistency be your defense, and your discipline be your legacy. Whether it's the temptation to react, the pull of the crowd, or the noise of negativity, know that you hold the power to choose your response. And that response, rooted in discipline and emotional mastery, is what keeps you moving forward. Stay focused on what truly matters. Stay grounded in your values. Keep doing the work when it's not exciting. Keep showing up when it's not easy. And never forget, the strongest voice in the room is often the one that doesn't have to speak at all. Your discipline defines your power. Your peace is your weapon. Your silence is your strategy. And your emotional control is the fortress that protects it all. Don't let the world shape you. Let your choices mold the world around you. Because the greatest victories in life are often the ones won in silence, in solitude, and in unwavering self-control. You don't have to prove yourself to anyone. Just keep walking in your truth. Keep walking in your strength. Keep walking in your purpose. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your presence. And thank you for choosing to grow. May you walk in wisdom. May you move in peace. And may you continue rising no matter what tries to hold you down. God bless you. Stay strong. Stay disciplined. Stay untouchable.